I could have got some socks this year, or a nice cheap bottle of wine, a tie, a chocolate orange, a pair of slippers would have been fine. We could have just said, stuff it, let's spend the whole week pissed. But what I got instead this year definitely was not on my Christmas list. I got food poisoning for Christmas. That questionable sandwich really took its toll. I spent Christmas Eve hurling into a bucket by the bed, and Christmas Day curled around the toilet bowl. I couldn't really focus on the presents. I struggled to keep down all the Christmas cheer. I apologise for the mess that I left in the bathroom sink. I shall try to make it up somehow next year. What folks, Thomas Benjamin Wilde Esquire here. I do hope you're all keeping well. This is song number 36 of my Song a Week project, which is actually a true story about last Christmas. Last year, I managed to eat something just before Christmas, which meant I was pretty much out for Christmas Day and Boxing Day. We had some friends over just beforehand, and I started to feel a little bit rough. It ended up that I couldn't go out and have lunch with them or dinner with them that evening because I was curled up in bed. Just about recovered in time for a little bit of Christmas dinner, considering the amount of stuff that we bought for it. I felt a little bit guilty. So it's actually a true story. It did happen to me last year. I did get food poisoning for Christmas, and it influenced this song. I'd had plans of doing this song since last year. And finally, I've been able to do it at an appropriate time. So there we go. A true story for you. I played this song on my Flight Soprano Ukulele. If you're interested in getting hold of one of these, then you can follow the link in the description for more information. Last week's song, of course, was about catching last trains home. I've had various comments and questions in relation to that. I need to point out my comment bingo, though. Last week I predicted that somebody would probably tell me that I should learn to drive rather than getting trains, and bingo, somebody did actually comment that in the Facebook comments on the reel on Facebook. So there we go. I've actually hit comment bingo this time. My predictions for this week, or for this song, is that somebody is going to complain that they hate Christmas. They can't stand Christmas and say bar humbug or something like that. I imagine that's what it's going to be. So that is my comments bingo for this week. Tune into the next video to find out whether I was correct in that. I'm not actually going to be doing a song next week because I've got the live album launch. More details of that will be coming up in a little while. Thank you very much for all your comments and questions from the last video. Just to read a few of them out now. Franco Walker 4662 says, this song definitely needs at least another verse. Superb. Okay. This might be one of the ones that I do turn into a full-length song potentially. I've got more to add. So Robber Bob 1001 says, I always love watching people on trains, especially like East Coast. If I get bored, just walking through all the carriages looking at different people. That's fair enough. Just wandering along through the carriages. Sometimes you have to do that because there's no seats available. So you just have to kind of almost wander through carriages looking for a seat. But yeah, there are all sorts on there. Sergeant Boucherie says, I used to work at the Bell Centre. When we had hockey games, I often just barely got the last subway home. But sometimes I missed it and had to wait 1 hour for the night bus to come by. It took an hour to get to my stop, and I had to walk 45 minutes to get back home. That was fun. Yes, night buses. When I used to live in London when I was a student, if we were out in London, we'd have to get the night bus back. And we lived right on the outskirts of London as well. So it took absolutely ages because it'd go around all the stops on the way. And yeah, night buses... They were slightly worse, I would say, than last trains home. Definitely an experience. A night bus. I often get late night buses as well. Coming back from gigs, if I don't want to have to stay over in a hotel, I sometimes get a National Express bus. That's generally quite calm, quite settled. They get a bad rep, but yeah, in my experience, late night buses, proper coaches, are generally fine. But yeah, the night bus in London was always interesting. The Divine Hairband says, flashbacks to nights out down Brighton. Yeah, I used to live in Brighton. Same. Getting the train at 4 a.m. back to Three Bridges, then a taxi back home, maybe with a Scooby burger from outside the station. Been a while, not sure I miss it. No, yeah. See, when Sarah and I first got together, she lived down in Brighton, I was living in Bedford, and there's a direct train from Bedford to Brighton. It's basically Bedford to Brighton line. That's the Thameslink line. And so I used to go down there and then often come back really late at night. And there was one time I fell asleep after a few drinks. Actually had managed to go all the way back to Bedford and then all the way back to Brighton and then back into London before I woke up again. And somebody had the chance to go through my wallet, take out the money, take out the bits and pieces they wanted, and then pop my wallet back into my pocket. So when I did actually finally get to Bedford to try and get a taxi home, I didn't have any money, and so I had to walk. That was very confusing at 5 a.m. to have left at kind of 11 o'clock at night to be getting home for 5, 6 in the morning and then have to go to work the next morning. So yeah, interesting experience. But yeah, I definitely remember trains from Brighton. Absolutely. Teffers says, I usually end up on the last train because I've aimed for the penultimate one and find that one has been cancelled. Yeah, that's another thing as well. Quite often you aim for a train and you look up on the board and it's been cancelled, and therefore the train that you end up on is far more packed because it's packed full of the people who are waiting for the one that's been cancelled as well. That's always a bloody nightmare. So Mike Gevers says, this song reminded me of the time I was dating my now wife. I had to travel for about 2 hours from my house to mine, and I met some interesting folks along that way. I especially dreaded the commute when there was a big football game on. Even though I would be drinking myself, I'd still be annoyed with drunk folks. Also, I feel your pain replacing toilet seats. Yeah, so I've had to catch the train back with various football fans and getting trains while people are travelling to games as well. So during the day is always a fucking nightmare. And you just end up wishing that their team loses. But you end up with all kinds of raucous people, and they kind of dominate the train. If you've listened to my other albums, Stag Do, that Please Don't is a song about those kind of people on trains. I mean, there's stag do's as well, but definitely football fans fall into that category. Big groups of lads drinking during the day or into the evening, who are being raucous and trying to take over a train carriage is always a nightmare. But also a reference there to the fact that I was trying to replace a toilet seat last week. I've not been able to yet, so we have to get handyman in to come and do it for us. Commander Ernie Paul says, I live and work near a major bus line, so most days commuting is no big deal. However, if I go to see a late show downtown, things get a little wonky. Got to figure out which bus or train leaves in time to catch the connection home and hope they're running on time to avoid a long walk home if it gets messed up somehow. Yeah, so catching connecting trains home is always a bloody nightmare as well. Because actually if you miss that, then you're stuck somewhere random. Generally, if I can get back into London, I'm absolutely fine because the trains go all night. But if I miss the tube, then I generally have to jump in a taxi or walk across London, which is always fun. But, there's some parts of London I quite enjoy walking through. If I'm down south and I'm coming through Waterloo, I'll always get off at Waterloo Station and walk along the South Bank to Blackfriars because it's a nice walk and it's quicker than waiting around for tubes and things like that. Auntie Rana says, having always lived in the suburbs/rural areas, I can't imagine not driving. Your droll descriptions of your fellow riders give me anxiety, to be honest. Yeah, absolutely give me anxiety as well. Have you never wanted to learn to drive, or maybe I'm assuming you don't know how to drive and rather you simply choose not to? Enjoyable as always. So no, I've never driven. I don't know how to drive. None of my family drove growing up. It wasn't too much of a problem because we lived in a small town just outside of Bedford. And it wasn't hard to get in, and Bedford's got good transport links anyway. So I've got over the years just got used to using public transport, buses, trains, and that kind of thing. And yeah, so that's what I've done all my life. My brother drives now, my sister doesn't. But I've never had the urge to, and actually it terrifies me. The prospect of getting behind a wheel of a car does actually terrify me. So yeah, so I've never learned to drive. And I've always been a bit scared too. Zoso 14892 says, replacing a toilet seat is much harder than you expect, isn't it? Yes, it is. I'm embarrassed to admit my dad and I struggled for far too long on mine when I replaced that. I'd probably rather try that again than get a late night train home though. Maybe. Yeah, I'm going to have to call somebody out to fix it. Alec Hopkins 6545 says, repairing the broken toilet seat. Did you call someone to fix it? We will be calling someone to fix it. A reference to another song of mine there. Yes, I will be calling someone to fix it because I can't do it. And I don't want to. Baron Corey says, when I was in school, sometimes I had to catch some of the late night buses to get home. It really is interesting the kind of people you meet on those late nights. It is. It really is. I've met people that I've chatted to on the way back as well. It's been quite nice. Sometimes you bump into people that you know as well. Potentially people that you've not really had a conversation with, but you strike up a conversation on the last train back home so that you've got some company. So yeah, it could be quite interesting. Any particular interesting specimens that stick in your head? There is one particular incident when I was on a train when I was younger, perhaps in my kind of late teens, early 20s. I'd fallen asleep on the train. And I was woken up by something hitting me in the face. Just a little kind of... I looked down, it was a kind of tiny bit of screwed up paper. And I looked up and they were a group of girls who were around kind of maybe 13, 14 who were firing a pea shooter at me from across the train. Now, when I wake up in that kind of sudden shock way, I have a habit of raging and getting really cross. But I didn't know what to do in that situation because they were 12, 13-year-old girls. And so I just had to stand up and walk out of the carriage. I wasn't sure what to do. I was a little bit drunk, rather cross. I think I mumbled some swear words and just walked away because I really couldn't think of anything else to do. But yeah, that's probably the one that sticks out for me. As I always say, folks, keep your questions and your comments coming underneath the videos. It makes these far more interesting. It means I've got more to talk about. Just to remind you that next weekend, next Sunday, I'm not going to be doing a song video because I will be going live from the Green Duck event space in Tunbridge Wells for the launch of the new album Carry On While the World Burns. That's coming out on Friday the 13th. This show will be on Sunday the 15th of December. So if you're in Tunbridge Wells area, it'd be lovely to see you. You can look at details on how you can come along to that in person in the description. Otherwise, you'll be able to watch it on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok and Instagram in the evening. I'll be putting more details up of timings for that during the week. It would be lovely to see you online or in person there. If you want to hear the new album before anybody else, then you can come and join me on Patreon for as little as £3 a month, where you get all kinds of exclusive access to videos, materials, works in progress and that kind of thing, as well as live streams. We did an album listening party last night, Thursday, and the whole thing is actually on YouTube as an unlisted thing for my patrons. So if you want to hear the album before anybody else, come and join me on Patreon. Details can be found in the description below. That's about it from me for this week. As I say, I won't be doing a song video next week, but I will be going live. I'll hopefully get another one in before Christmas. And until next time, stay safe and toodle pip.